I'm going to throw a lot of numbers at you, so I think what I'd like to start out with is something on a little lighter note. I asked Vic Story if I could use him for an example. I had a little bit of an epiphany this weekend, and I'm embarrassed to say that it took me better part of 3 years to figure this out. But I'll tell you a two-part story. I've got two sections in this presentation today, and I'll give you the first part, and then I'll wrap it up. And tell you what my epiphany was. But the story that got me there was Rob Watson called me here a couple weeks ago and wanted me to go with him to meet with Vic Story, and so we went and we talked about some water treatment issues and whatnot, and we were wrapping up the meeting, and Rob and Vic are buddies from way back, and they started talking about stuff there at the table, and I'm sitting there, and Rob was telling Vic that there was a new restaurant up there where he lives that his wife wanted him to go to, and so they decided one Saturday morning they were going to go there for breakfast. So Rob and his wife Sandy roll in there, and they have breakfast, and Rob's looking through the menu, and he says, I don't see any grits on this menu. And so the waitress comes over, and Rob says, he goes, you got grits here? And the waitress says, no, sir, we don't. And he says, man, another Yankee-fied restaurant. And his wife was kind of starting to scoot down in her chair a little bit, and so Rob's like, I'm never eating there again. So, and of course me, I haven't realized yet that I need to treat Rob like my wife. The less said, the better. Because I piped up and said, I said, I don't see a problem with that, because I grew up in Pennsylvania, and Vic was asking. I said, yeah, I was born in New York, and Rob's over there muttering something, well, that fills in the rest of the gaps. So... And Rob said, and I said, I've been here for 26 years. I said, doesn't that make me almost a native by now? And Rob looked at me and he says, you know what? He says, once a Yankee, always a Yankee. So I guess I'm still a Yankee even after 26 years. But stay tuned for part two, and I'll tell you what my epiphany is. But welcome to our meeting. I'm going to talk about a little bit about tree health and some water treatment issues, and then later, the last part of the program, I'll talk about our foliar program for this year. But we got some basics of sound agronomic practices, and you've all heard this a million times, but I think the longer we're in the industry, we tend to start forgetting some of the basics, and these are all issues that I seen visiting people's groves over the last year or so. Spray volume is still important. I know we've reduced spray volume to try and get around more, but it will affect your mite control program and coverage issue diseases. Spray pH, this is a big one. A lot of people are worried about what the pH of our material is. What we really need to be concerned with is what the pH is of your final mix that's coming out of your sprayer. Material compatibility, I still see a lot of this. I think Timmy used to say, you can spray out a dog turd. He said, but if you have big enough nozzles, but just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. So, some of these complicated, tank mixes just don't work. So you're getting a lot of insoluble materials out on your trees. Weather conditions, spray. I've seen people spraying in rain and heavy wind. Timing, I think we're getting better on this. We're targeting our flushes, both root and foliar. Sampling, I've seen a lot more people doing some water sampling now. And be in the grove. So here's the three-prong approach: leaf sampling, soil, and water quality sampling. We've always been pretty good at the first two, but I think the third one's catching on. And of course, here the leaf, you want to sample at the proper time. I stole this from IFAS. This is in their basic citrus, and this is about the time where your spring flush is hitting 4 to 6 months. And there it is, 4 to 6 month old. And make sure our people, I know a lot of people have their hourly help and whatnot do this, so we'll make sure they're sampling correctly. Soil sampling. I told a story in the last two meetings. I started out in the R&D department of a big citrus company, and we took a lot of samples. And what we learned was, and we took a lot of leaf samples in a diamond pattern in a grove or around random sampling around the grove. And what we found is statistically, if you pick a representative area and walk down that row and zigzag, take your leaf samples and come back, take your soil samples on the walk back, statistically you get the same results. So you don't have to make this hard or time consuming. Water sampling, you should run it at least 5 to 10 minutes. You clear out all that older water. 16-ounce sampling container, and you want to make sure you eliminate any air pockets. And leaf results, established levels. I think a lot of people don't think the old standards still apply with the new greening era. We probably need a little bit more, but that doesn't necessarily mean just throwing more out there. You want to be more efficient doing it. And soil samples, you want to pay attention to your pH and calcium levels. And of course, your water samples, you want to look at the pH and the bicarbonate issues and choose the appropriate course of action. And that'll lead me into the water quality. We got to pay attention to the pH, and the bicarbonates have a lot to do with that. And here's a good old bicarbonate molecule, just so you know what it looks like. It does have a negative charge, and it is the main alkaline factor in almost all water. And I put the definition of alkalinity there. It's the capacity of water to neutralize an acid. So, and some fun facts here I dug up from, I think, Texas A&M. Calcium and magnesium will both form insoluble carbonates when they come in contact with carbonates. And each pound of bicarbonate you have in the soil can tie up 1 pound of soluble calcium. And then this will be an important number here because I'm going to use it later. 100 parts per million of bicarbonates will still give you 275 pounds per acre if you put out an acre foot of irrigation water, 12 inches. And how do we treat bicarbonates? Well, some people can have the time and the equipment to aerate it, just like they do for sulfur water. But we're kind of trapped with using acid. And there's an acid is a hydrogen ion donor. So what happens when we treat it with an acid? Well, here's your bicarbonate. Here's your acid. So you get good old carbon dioxide and water when you do that. And what acids are generally used? Well, the N-furic's one of the popular ones. A lot of people use that to dose. Phosphoric, you got to be careful with your phosphorus levels if you use too much of that. And of course, nitric. That's not been popular in citrus, but the vegetable guys have used that for a long time. So I'm going to give you an example and take a look at a couple different ways that we can attack this. We're going to start out, this is an actual sample from one of the Ben Hill Griffin groves, and a little hard to see, so I'll blow it up for you. We got 211 parts per million bicarbonates with a pH of 7.7. So thanks to Timmy Mann has a handy dandy little sheet there, a spreadsheet. USA, simply urea sulfuric acid, we have that in bulk, we call it USA. Here's our sample pH. Here's our bicarbonates. We plug this into the spreadsheet. We want to target 100 because if you would put 0 in there, it would be so vastly cost prohibitive that you wouldn't do it. I just chose these numbers because it made the math easy. 500 gallons per minute well, 100 acres. And this is an assumption. Some people put out more. This is 12 acre inches or an acre foot. So if you plug that into the sheet, it's telling me of the N-furic, which is 50% sulfuric, you need 15.4 ounces for every 1,000 gallons you pump. And that will get you down to 100 bicarbs left in your water and a pH of 6.27. And you would set your pump at 0.06 of a gallon per minute. And if you did that and you put out 12 acre inches for the entire year, you would use 3,912 gallons. You'd put out 74 pounds of nitrogen and 79 pounds of sulfur per acre. All right, and we'll do the same for a nitric and phosphoric acid mix, and we sell a lot of this. Just a disclaimer right up front. When you use nitric acid, and we learned the hard way, that you can't use murate. It will form hydrochloric acid, and it ate up all of our filters and all kinds of stuff, so it's not good. Also, you can't use urea with nitric acid. It looks really pretty for about a minute, and then it forms all these little silver particles that'll precipitate out. But anyhow, here's the blend ticket for a 626, about 200 gallons per ton. And I plugged it in the same way. Here's our 7.7 pH, 211 bicarbs. We're still getting 100 parts per million bicarbs left after the treatment. Flow rate, acres treated. And here we end up with same final pH, same bicarbs, but we're using 0.31 gallons per minute. And if we did that for 12 acre inches for a year, you'd end up with 20,515 gallons. And here's your nutrients applied per acre. This would be a lot. This would be over half of what you're doing N and K and probably all your P. So the reason it'll be apparent here in a minute. So here's the calculations. $5 a gallon roughly for N-furic times your gallons. So you're looking at about $19,500 or $195.60 per acre. And for that 195 or almost 200, you're getting 74 pounds of N and 79 pounds of sulfur. You do the same thing with the nitric, it's going to be $1.70. It's over $3.40 a ton. So you're looking at about $35,000, which would be kind of ugly because you're spending almost $350 an acre just for irrigation. But you are getting over half of your nutrients. So what I'd like to show you is an alternative that I think will work. This is a slugging deal, and I think it's from some of the trials I've done, it seems to be more effective than the constant dosing, and I'll tell you why I think that in a minute. But growers can put out 10 gallons or split it into 2.5. That would be better if you can do that. I know it's more management. So here's the math. You're down to $17 per month or $204. So basically you're breaking even now with what you're doing with the N-furic dosing it. And what you're getting, here's each time. So at the end of the year, you're getting 72 pounds of N and K and 24 pounds of P. So you're right in line with the N-furic. And what you're doing is each time you do this, you're putting out some free acid into the grove. So you're breaking up, you're eating up all those bicarbs in the water when you're injecting, and you're putting out free acid onto your soil. So look at this a little bit differently. I took, don't get too caught up in the math here. This will be on the website if you're really interested. And it's kind of higher math for a Yankee, but I struggle through it. I just took an average cost of $400 per ton for a ton of just regular fertilizer. You basically apply 60% of a ton if you do 3 applications. So $240 an acre basically times the savings, because you can cut one off here because you're putting out 1/3 of your N and K already, and you're getting phosphorus. So if you cut your dry down, you're going to realize the savings of $81.60. And I realize there's application costs and all that other stuff, but so basically, if you take that $204 that you're spending to slug this out every month, and I might mention also that you're breaking that one dry application up into 12, so you're doing a better job of spoon feeding these trees each month. You're down to a cost per acre of $122.40, plus you're getting out that extra P and K that you weren't getting with the N-furic. So here's that math. And here's the free acid and the extra nutrients you're getting. So we're looking for a way to make it sensible and actually save you some money. All right, I do a lot of trials. Unfortunately, most are not successful, and they are time consuming and labor intensive. So here's an update. I started this trial. It was a humate product and a recovery product, and the recovery had humate and some molasses, and a lot of these companies or independent people won't tell me exactly what's in there. I can sort of tell if you can smell molasses and all that stuff. But we started this in 2014, ended up this year in March. It was applied with a 408 with miners at 10 gallons per acre at the manufacturer's request. And after basically 10 months, I could see no difference. This was a random replicated trial, replicated 3 times with a control. After the 10 months, they all looked identical. I couldn't tell a difference, so I pulled the plug on this trial. Microbe trial, this is part 2. The first one I went over last year, if anybody was here last year and remembers. It was a full acre. I treated it by hand, both foliar and root drench. After 5 months, there was no difference. The company said, well, you're not applying it commercially, with commercial equipment, blah, blah, blah. So what I did is I got a commercial company to apply it for me. We ran it for 7 months. Here's the block. We did have a control. We zoned this off so we could keep it from getting the root applied through the injection system. There was 2 main lines here and here, so we blocked it off. And every month it got the foliar and the injection of the microbes and some food also that was part of their package. And on the 7th month, the grower said, that's it. We're not doing it anymore. It was we weren't seeing any difference. Again, the control looked just as good as the rest of the blocks, so we pulled the plug on that. We will. I'm guessing we're not going to be carrying that product, but now onto some trials I got on right now. Product called Soil Carb. The reason I'm doing this trial is some of the components involved in Soil Carb used to blend it from a very reputable company. So it has a little bit of merit, so I looked at it. Here it's on 896, the setting. And we started this year in July, and we're applying it every month. I usually run these for about a year because you can usually tell after about a year if they're really doing anything. I've got 10 different treatments. They are replicated 3 times. And the way I do a lot of these trials is I'll just pick a row, and these are on 5-row beds. So I don't choose the 2 outside rows. I just put them on the 3 top crown rows. So I keep out that water furrow effect. And so each bed has 3 treatments on it. And I run it, I skip the first 5, treat 5, skip 5, treat 5, on down the row. So what is Soil Carb? I didn't know what it was until they came to me. It's a calcium lignosulfate. Basically, that's just a younger form of humic acid that comes from Linardite. Humic acid has mostly short chain because it's older and it's been broke down more. The Soil Carb has both short and long. And here they're claiming 60% carbon. And when you buy 12% humate, you're getting about 50% carbon. And they're claiming it stimulates microbial activity, nutrient availability, and it helps convert carbonates and break them down. So that's why I decided to look at this product. Hopefully I'll have results next year. Micronutrient and SAR trial. Ed Dickinson from Alltech helped me out with this. We decided we were going to use some Alltech SARs in here with some PO3. And this is all root drench. And I decided to use some higher rates of manganese and zinc based off of what Jude Grosser saw in some of his trials. Jude didn't really have any statistical differences, but I think his data was muddled because he had so many variables in there. And so I tried to, I've got a lot of variables, but I build out as I go. So this one's a little challenging because it's every 3 weeks. So there's a set 18 treatments every 3 weeks, and then there's replicated 3 times, and then there's another set I do monthly, which is kind of a label type thing. So I'm trying both quarterly and every 3 weeks. And the reason I chose every 3 weeks is I took a trip to Alltech up in Lexington and talked to some of their research people. And the SARs I'm using from Alltech is a product called Soil Set, and Ed's going to talk about that here shortly. It's been shown in their lab to upregulate a plant for 3 weeks. So I want to keep that plant upregulated, and keep it pumping its own defensive mechanisms while I'm applying these other products. As you see, I started in April. Zach Long, our youngest salesman, he's been helping me do the grunt work out there, running from mosquitoes and sweating. And this is a trial that just wrapped up. This is our Fast Eddie trial. Again, it was named after Fast Eddie Dickinson because the first treatment is actually his idea. Again, this is in the same area. I tried to keep the trials relatively close to each other. It helps on the management aspect of it. We started in October of 2014, went through November of this year. Treatments were complex aid and soil set for the first treatment. And what the soil set did is, and Ed's going to expound on this, is it kind of sterilized the soil. It knocked out a lot of the bad guys in there, a lot of the bad microbes. Complex aid just kind of helped to set it up. And then I followed it on the next treatment 3 weeks later with compost aid, which is their microbial package. And Ed's going to be, again, talking more about that. This is this is from another company that I threw in there, had some promising aspects to it. Colloidal molasses microbial package. Green Sol, this is a company from the Midwest that approached us and said, hey, can you try this on citrus? We have no data. We don't know what it does. It's basically a group of growth regulators. NutriQuick from Natural Ag Solutions. I got that wrong yesterday. And a product called EB97, which is another yeast hydrolysate product, SAR inducer. And this is the data. There's nothing here to see really. This is, each one of these treatments is compared to its own control. There's not a huge difference in any of them, hundreds, in most cases, points. There was no real consensus on which one outperformed its control better. And here it is compared to each other. Again, everything in red is the highest level for that nutrient. You got a little bit of a, each one did its thing in certain areas. And we also took trunk calipers. And you see the complex aid, compost aid did pretty well. At first I wasn't too sure about this data, but I think we did have an effect on the trunk caliper. There was a lot of variability tree to tree across this block. The molasses and microbe mix, almost 2 millimeters. The green sol, this one was interesting because this did correlate back to what we saw in the grove. These trees were, even after the 4th month of applying this, they were noticeably shorter. So the growth regulators had a negative effect on the young tree growth. NutriQuick did reasonably well. And then the EB97, which has always performed relatively well in the trials, actually had a negative impact. But something was going on in this row here, and I'm not quite sure what it was. Because you can see here the average for control is higher caliper-wise than any of the rest of them, treatment or control. So something funky was going on in that block. And this is a trial we just started. I haven't even applied anything yet, but the trees were planted. We planted them. This is in a research area in a grove very close to the plant at Sears Road. And the reason I put it in there is because I want to be able to dig these up at the end. And I want to look at the roots and the root mass. And what this is going to be is going to be a young tree trial with a couple different blends, one of which I made up with Ed's help. So we're going to try and come up with our own young tree all in one. So it should have everything in it that you'll need. And like I said, the first application will be this month. So, and I put this in here for Rob Watson too. This is a trial I did last year and wrapped up in the same area where I dug it up. When I first took this picture and I planted it and I wasn't paying attention, you see I even had a little stake here. I sent this to Mike, and Mike's looking at it and he goes, "Were you out drinking before you planted that or what?" And I'm like, it is pretty bad, isn't it? I've planted commercial grows before. I worked for some big companies and I'm embarrassed. But That being said, this is the new one. Huh? Nice. So I told Rob Watson, I said, see, you can teach an old Yankee new tricks. So that will be a trial. Hopefully it'll wind up next year and I'll have data from, and hopefully have a couple nice new products. So with that, that'll wrap up first part of my engagement here, and I think we got Kyle next. So Kyle.